Hey, Arise family, let's study Joshua 22. If you're a little late to this series, I want to let you know it's okay. Everything is still available to you. You can go down in the playlist and watch from the first chapter all the way through. We also have a study guide for every single chapter over on Kandi, Nicole, Arise.com. Today we're studying Joshua chapter 22, and it's about to get real. Y'all about to see what I'm talking about. It's about to get real up in here. All right. So the eastern tribes return home. Sounds about right. Remember the guys that were actually wanting the land right before they crossed the Jordan? That land that they were previously at before they crossed over, but they had to come along with their brothers and fight with them. And until they would get rest, then they couldn't return to the land. Well, the fighting is done and they can go back home now. Okay. So Joshua summoned the Reubenites, Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, and told them, "You have done everything Moses, the Lord's servant, commanded you, and you have obeyed me in everything I commanded you. You have not deserted your brothers, even once this whole time. But I have carried out the requirement of the command of the Lord, your God. Now that he has given your brothers rest, just as he promised them, return to your homes in your own land that Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you across the Jordan. Only carefully obey the command and instruction that Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you. To love the Lord your God, walk in all of his ways, keep his commandments. Be loyal to him and serve him with all your heart and all your soul." Joshua blessed them and sent them away on their way, and they went to their homes. Moses had given them territory to half of the tribe of Manasseh in Bashan, but Joshua had given territory to the other half with their brothers on the west side of the Jordan. When Joshua sent them to their homes and blessed them, he said, "Return to your homes with great wealth, a huge number of cattle, silver, gold, bronze, iron, and a large quantity of clothing. Share the spoils of your enemies with your brothers." So he's saying, go back home. It's time to return home to your families. I'm sending you back with spoils, gifts, just a whole bunch of things. And share all of these things with your brothers whenever you return. He says, but you keep the Lord's commands. Make sure you're keeping the Lord's commands. So both of those sides of those tribes return. One is settling on the other side of the Jordan, and then one is settling on the other side. So basically the Jordan is in between, and there are two different tribes that are splitting up and separating in those areas, taking over, okay? So in verse 9, it says, "The Reubenites, Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Soho in the land of Canaan to return to their own land of Gilead, which they took possession of according to the Lord's commands through Moses. When he came to the region of the Jordan and the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh built a large, impressive altar by the Jordan. Then the Israelites heard of it and said, 'Look, the Reubenites, Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh have built an altar on the frontier of the land of Canaan, at the region of the Jordan, on the Israelite side.' When the Israelites heard of this, the entire Israelite community assembled at Sohoth to go to war against them." So they're making some assumptions. They're assuming that this altar that they built is them going against the Lord's word, like building up an altar for something else. They don't even question it. They just say, okay, we're going to war, because if you guys are turning against the Lord and the Lord is looking at you as a part of our tribe, we all know what happened last time. We're not going to be in trouble because of y'all. So we're gearing up right now. We're getting our stuff and we're coming for y'all, because we're not going to have no problems. Okay? We're not all getting thrown out of this land or having problems with the Lord because you doing whatever you want to do over there. Okay, we're about to go handle business. All right. So then verse 13 says, "The Israelites sent Hesathon son of Esau, the priest of the Reubenites, Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead. They sent 10 leaders with them, one family leader for each tribe of Israel. All of them were heads of their ancestral families among the clans of Israel. They went to the Reubenites, Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead and told them, "This is what the Lord's entire community says. What is this treachery you have committed today against the God of Israel by turning away from the Lord and building an altar for yourselves so that you are in rebellion against the Lord today? Was it the inquiry of Peor which brought a plague on us, the Lord's community, enough for us? We have not cleansed ourselves from it even to this day. And now you would turn away from the Lord? You rebel against the Lord today? Tomorrow he will anger with his entire community of Israel. But the land you possess is defiled. Cross over to the land the Lord possesses, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and take possession of it among us. But do not rebel against the Lord or against us by building yourselves an altar other than the altar of the Lord our God. Wasn't Ashan, son of Zebonite, unfaithful regarding what was set apart for destruction? Remember that? Bringing wrath on the entire community of Israel? He was not the only one who perished because of inquiry. Now, if you remember this, back in the beginning of Joshua, there was somebody that hid the little suit. I called it a Gucci suit, and some gold and silver. And he got his whole family kicked out and stoned. And okay, didn't you learn from him? That's what they're saying. Didn't you learn from him? So it says the Reubenites, Gadites, and half of the tribe of Manasseh answered the heads of Israel clans. The mighty one God, the Lord, the mighty one, God, Lord, he knows. And may Israel also know, do not spare us today, if it wasn't rebellion or treachery against the Lord that we have built ourselves an altar to turn away from him. Maybe the Lord himself hold us accountable if we intend to burn offerings and grain offerings on it, or to sacrifice fellowship offerings on it. We actually did this from a certain concern, okay? We actually did this from a certain specific concern. In the future, your descendants might say to our descendants, what relationship do you have with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between us, and you descendants of Reuben and Gad, you have no share in the Lord. So your descendants may cause our descendants to stop fearing the Lord. So they're actually fearful that at some point in time that they're not going to be remembered, that they're not going to be remembered as a part of Israel, because there's a separation there, a physical separation of the Jordan River. So they're afraid that they're going to be cut off. So the altar they put there was actually a symbolization to say that they are a part of the Lord, and they did this in fear. They did this in fear. And so when we act in fear, sometimes we do some things that seems a bit foolish, because this would seem a bit foolish, okay? It says in verse 26, therefore we said, let's take action and build an altar for ourselves, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifice. Instead, it is to be a witness between us and you, between the generations after us, so that we may carry out worship of the Lord in his presence with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, fellowship offerings. Then in the future, your descendants will not be able to say to our descendants, you have no share in the Lord. We thought that if they said this to us, to our generations in the future, we would reply, look at the replica of the Lord's altar that our ancestors made, not for burnt offerings or sacrifice, but as a witness between us and you. We would never rebel against the Lord or turn away from him today by building an altar of burnt offerings, grain offerings, or sacrifice, other than an altar of the Lord our God, which is in front of his tabernacle. So they did this to, first of all, they didn't consult with anybody. That was the problem. They did it without even consulting or telling the others what this altar was about. So these others jumped to a conclusion. They wanted to go to war against them, thinking that they were doing the same thing as this guy did, Absalom, in the past, the one that brought the trouble about them. So they didn't want any trouble. Okay. So now we're going to see they're going to resolve the conflict between them. All right. In verse 30, it says, when the priest Manasseh has, okay, these names, okay. When the priest Phinehas and the community leaders, the heads of Israel clans who were with him, heard what the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh had to say, they were pleased. Phinehas, son of Esau, the priest, said to the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is among us, because you have not committed this treachery against him. As a result, you have rescued the Israelites from the Lord's power. Then the priest, Phinehas, son of Esau, and the leaders returned from the Reubenites and Gadites in the land of Gilead to the Israelites in the land of Canaan, and brought back a report to them. The Israelites were pleased with the report, and they blessed God. They spoke no more about going to war against them to ravage the land where the Reubenites and Gadites live. So the Reubenites and the Gadites named the altar, it is a witness between us that the Lord is God. So this is what happens when you jump to conclusions. Okay. This is also what happens when you allow fear to lead you. When you allow fear to lead you, you do some things that might seem a bit foolish. You might even do something that will cause people to assume certain things that may not be true. They didn't even have the right communication here. They were lacking communication in their relationship, okay? No one went back to communicate what this altar was about. They just set it up and said nothing and left it up to the imagination. So what we can learn from this is not to jump to conclusions, to ask some questions, to have some communication between our brothers and our sisters before we jump to some accusations in our head. Another thing we should do is not allow fear to lead us, and maybe sit and again have a little communication between our brothers and sisters to communicate our fears. So basically what they were needing was they needed a little counselor. They needed a little counseling session where they could communicate between each other, okay? I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Like I said, there's a study guide that is available for this chapter over on KandyNicoleArise.com. And I will see you tomorrow for the next chapter.